Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here, former federal prosecutor, former Army JAG. Trying to put together a series of YouTube videos dealing with legal issues of the day, legal issues we're all contending with. And some people have been watching the videos and they told me they couldn't quite hear the sound, so I actually went out and got a mic. I feel very high tech now. And I think we can all agree these production values really do dazzle. Okay, it kind of looks like a 1978 high school science class, but this is about the best I can do, so just hang with me, okay? A lot of people have been asking what is, I think, an obvious question at this point, and that is, with the mounting coronavirus deaths, so many of which seem to be perhaps avoidable if our federal government and if Donald Trump had taken the steps necessary up front to deal with what we all saw was this pandemic, can he be held accountable for any of those deaths? What I would like to do is talk about the law of homicide. So for 22 of my 30 years as a prosecutor, I investigated, indicted, and tried murder cases here in Washington, D.C. I'm not saying I'm the preeminent expert on homicide cases, but I am pretty conversant in the law of homicide. So let me talk about the different levels of homicide and specifically what it takes to prove a homicide case against somebody. So, we all probably have heard there's first-degree murder, there's second-degree murder, there's voluntary manslaughter, there's involuntary manslaughter. There's also something called negligent homicide. What I will say is different jurisdictions call the lowest level of homicide different things. Some call it involuntary manslaughter, some call it negligent homicide. I'm going to refer to it just for ease of reference as involuntary manslaughter. So what does it take to actually hold somebody accountable for involuntary manslaughter? So I'm going to go to the whiteboard here. Invol manslaughter. So in order to prove involuntary manslaughter, there are three elements. Now, elements are just sort of the facts or the evidence that the prosecutor needs to prove to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt in order to hold somebody accountable for involuntary manslaughter. The first element is that somebody acted in a grossly negligent way. In other words, somebody did something in a way that was so extremely negligent that it put others in harm's way. So element number one is that somebody acted in a grossly negligent way. Acted with gross negligence. That's the first element. Now, there's a slight variation of that first element that I think applies to this situation. Manslaughter liability can be there if somebody acts in a grossly negligent manner, or if somebody has a duty to act and they, in a grossly negligent manner, fail to act. They fail to fulfill that duty. So element one is acted in an extremely negligent way or failed to act when they should have acted, okay? The second element is that their action or failure to act put other people in harm's way, essentially that it created a risk of serious bodily injury or death to another. So the second element is the action created a risk to others of either serious bodily injury or of death. And then the third element is that by their gross negligence and by putting somebody in harm's way, they caused the death of another. So the third element is causation. And let me stop on causation for a minute because, you might say, well, the president didn't literally personally kill anybody. He didn't fire a gun. He didn't stab anybody, so he didn't cause their death. But the way the law defines causation is not quite that direct. So causation in the law of homicide is defined as somebody who does something that is a substantial factor in bringing about the death of another. So causation just requires that the act is a substantial factor in bringing about the death. So those are the three elements of involuntary manslaughter: that somebody acted or failed to act in an extremely negligent manner, that their action or failure to act put others in harm's way of serious bodily injury or death, and that they caused the death of another, with causation being a substantial factor in bringing about the death. So those are the elements. What I want to do tomorrow is talk about Donald Trump's conduct and how his conduct fits into these three elements, and then discuss whether he is responsible for involuntary manslaughter. The other thing I'd like to do is, if you all have questions that you'd like me to answer, go ahead and tweet them to me, and I will try to include as many answers as I can. I'm going to try to do one video a day moving forward. As we all know from watching the nonstop coronavirus coverage on TV, there are relatively few legal analysts appearing these days, and it's more the doctors who are appearing all day, every day, telling us about what's going on in our communities and in our country with respect to the coronavirus, and that is as it should be, because that's the information we need right now in real time. So I'm going to try to put out these videos, maybe one a day, answer your questions, and deal with, what are the important legal topics of the day. So I hope you all have a good night. Please stay safe. Please stay virus-free, and I'll see you again soon.